You probably think of trauma as an event, something that happened, a specific moment you can point to on a timeline, the accident, the loss, the night everything changed. But neuroscience has spent the last 3 decades quietly dismantling that idea, because trauma isn't just something that happened to you. In many cases, it's something that happened inside you, something that rewired the way you perceive danger, interpret kindness, and understand your own worth. And the most unsettling part is that most people carrying these rewired patterns have no idea they're doing it. They just think that's who they are. This video isn't about the dramatic version of trauma that you see in films. It's about the quieter version, the one that hides inside your habits, your relationships, your automatic reactions to ordinary moments. The one that looks, from the outside, like a personality. 10 signs your mind was shaped by trauma, and the science behind why this happens to any brain that had to protect itself to survive. If this is already making you look at your life differently, subscribe and hit like. There's a lot more where this came from. Now let's go deeper. The first sign is hypervigilance, not the dramatic movie version where someone dives under a table at a loud noise. The everyday version, the one where you walk into a room and immediately scan it. Who's here? What are their expressions? Where are the exits? You do this without thinking. It feels like awareness, like simply paying attention. But research published in the journal Biological Psychiatry found that the brains of individuals with a trauma history show chronically elevated activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. Even in the complete absence of threat, the alarm system was turned up years ago and was never turned back down. What feels like attentiveness is actually your nervous system treating every room like it might be dangerous. The second sign is difficulty trusting good things. When something positive happens, a promotion, a compliment, a relationship that seems stable, there is a part of you that waits for it to fall apart. You don't celebrate fully because celebration feels like the moment right before disappointment. Psychologist Martin Seligman's research on learned helplessness showed that when organisms are repeatedly exposed to uncontrollable negative outcomes, they stop believing positive outcomes are stable or real. If your early environment was unpredictable, if safety came and went without warning, your brain learned that good things are temporary. So now, even when nothing is wrong, something in you insists something is about to be. The third sign is a powerful need to control your environment, not because you're a control freak in the way people say it dismissively, but because unpredictability was once genuinely unsafe. UCLA researchers found that individuals with adverse childhood experiences show a significantly higher need for environmental predictability as adults. When your nervous system spent formative years unable to predict what was coming next, a parent's mood, a sudden absence, a shift in the emotional atmosphere, it responds by trying to control everything it can reach. The planner who panics when plans change, the person who needs to know exactly what's happening before they can relax. That isn't rigidity. That is a nervous system doing the only thing it was ever taught to do. The fourth sign is emotional numbness that arrives without invitation. There are moments when you should feel something, joy at an important event, grief at a real loss, and instead you feel a quiet distance, as if you're watching yourself from slightly outside your own body. This is not coldness, this is dissociation, and it is one of the most well-documented trauma responses in clinical literature. Psychiatrist Bessel Kolk, in his landmark research with Vietnam veterans and abuse survivors, documented how the brain learns to suppress overwhelming emotional experiences by essentially turning down the volume on feeling itself. What starts as a survival mechanism becomes a default setting. The numbness that once saved you stays long after the danger is gone. The fifth sign is that you apologize compulsively. You apologize for taking up space, for having an opinion, for existing in a way that someone might find inconvenient. You say sorry before you've even registered whether you did anything wrong, as a reflex, a social preemptive strike. Mary Ainsworth's research on attachment theory, expanded by John Bowlby, established that children who receive inconsistent or emotionally unavailable caregiving develop an anxious attachment style, and one of its clearest behavioral markers is preemptive appeasement. You learned early that your needs or your presence caused friction, so you began managing other people's reactions before they could happen. That apology isn't politeness, it's a very old attempt to stay safe. The sixth sign is a persistent, unlocatable sense of shame. Not guilt about something specific you did, shame about who you are. A quiet but constant feeling that there is something fundamentally wrong with you, something that would make people leave if they really knew. Researcher Brené Brown identified shame as the most corrosive of all social emotions, precisely because it is self-directed rather than behavior-directed. Trauma that occurs in relationship, neglect, emotional abuse, being made to feel like a burden, consistently produces this kind of internalized wrongness. The child who is treated as too much or not enough grows into an adult who carries that verdict like a fact. The seventh sign is difficulty identifying what you actually feel in the moment. Someone asks how you're doing and there is a pause, not because you're thinking of the right words, but because you genuinely don't know. Psychologist Levine describes how prolonged traumatic stress disrupts interoception, the brain's ability to read its own internal states. You learn to monitor the external world so obsessively that the internal world goes largely unread. You become expert at detecting other people's emotional states and nearly illiterate about your own. This is why so many people with trauma histories describe feeling fine until they're not. No gradual buildup, just a sudden overflow from a system they stopped being able to monitor. The eighth sign is that your body holds tension you cannot fully release. There is a place in you, the jaw, the shoulders, the chest, that never fully unclenches. You might notice it in moments of quiet, when there is no reason for tension and yet it is there, holding. Neuroscientist Stephen Porges demonstrated through polyvagal theory that the autonomic nervous system stores traumatic activation in the body, in muscle tone, posture, breathing patterns. Kolk's clinical research confirmed it. Trauma survivors consistently show elevated muscle tension, even when their minds report no current distress. The body kept the score long after the mind tried to move on. The ninth sign is intense, disproportionate reactions to small triggers. A particular tone of voice makes your stomach drop. A certain type of silence feels like danger. Someone canceling plans sends you into an emotional state entirely out of proportion to the event. This is because trauma memories are stored differently than ordinary memories. Research by neuroscientist LeDoux at New York University showed that fear memories are encoded through the amygdala in a way that bypasses normal narrative processing, stored as raw sensory fragments, not stories. So when a sensory detail in the present resembles something from the past, the response is immediate and total. The brain doesn't know how much time has passed. It only knows this feels like danger. The 10th sign is a deep, inexhaustible empathy for other people's pain. You feel it, not metaphorically. You actually feel it, sometimes before the person is even done speaking. You sit with people who are suffering and you do not flinch away the way others do. This seems like a gift, and in many ways it is, but it did not begin as a gift. Psychiatrist Bruce Perry's research at the Child Trauma Academy showed that children in unpredictable emotional environments develop heightened sensitivity to other people's states as a survival adaptation. Reading the room was once a matter of safety. What you now experience as compassion was first built as radar. The empathy is real. The origin of it is the wound. Drop a comment below. Which of these 10 hit closest to home? Was it something you already half knew, or did one of them completely reframe something you'd never questioned? Here is what makes this so difficult to see clearly. Every single one of these signs makes sense. That is the point. The hypervigilance kept you alert. The control kept you prepared. The numbness kept you functional. The empathy kept you connected. These were not failures of character. They were solutions. Intelligent solutions built by a mind doing exactly what it needed to survive circumstances that were genuinely hard. The problem is not that these adaptations exist. The problem is that they do not know when to stop. They were built for a world that no longer exists. So they keep running. They keep watching the door even when no one dangerous is coming through it. If this reshapes something in the way you understand yourself or someone you love, subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Like the video if this is the kind of truth you want more of. There is a question that researchers in trauma psychology have been circling for decades, and it has never been cleanly answered. If these patterns are so adaptive, if they genuinely helped people survive, then at what point do we call them disorders? At what point does a nervous system stop being brave and start being stuck? And here's the question that matters more than any of the others. If the mind that you have right now was built in response to something that happened, and that something is over, who would you be if it finally felt safe enough to let the alarm rest?